Hi guys, this is Dr. Janki Shah. We now come to the next type of epidemiology, that is analytical epidemiology. We finished with descriptive epidemiology, which was the first phase of investigation where the questions who, where, when and what is the disease were asked, while in analytical epidemiology the question asked is why. There are two types of analytical epidemiology: case control or retrospective study, that is when we start the study the disease has already occurred, while the second one is known as the cohort study or the prospective study or the forward looking study, where when we start the study the disease has not occurred and therefore we have to wait for it to occur. So let's first come to case control study. There are 4 steps. First, the selection of cases and controls. Cases meaning people who have the disease, while controls means people who resemble the cases in all ways, but the only thing is the disease in them is absent. Then you match the cases and control, then you measure the exposure and then do analysis and interpretation. We come to each step in detail. Before that, the design of the case control study is the direction of inquiry is in reverse. That is, when we start the population, there are cases of people with the disease and controls whether people are without the disease, and then you have to study those who are exposed to the etiological factor and those who are not exposed to the etiological factors in both the groups. So, it is a retrospective study. The first step is selection of cases. There first we have to identify the case. Identifying the case means you define the disease criteria accurately, both diagnostic criteria as well as eligibility criteria. Diagnostic criteria meaning which stage of the disease are you going to include in the study. As for example, if it is caries, then will you include when there is a catch, or when there is a discoloration, or when there is a proper cavity where there is soft matter coming out from the base of the cavity. And eligibility criteria means that you select the age, sex, the occupation, or whatever the relevant criteria to the study, you have to select that. So, there are 2 types of criteria you select in the disease criteria: diagnostic criteria and eligibility criteria. Once you start the study, you cannot change the criteria. If you are not getting the cases or the controls, you cannot change in between in this study. Where will you locate these cases? You can locate the cases from medical records easily, from the hospitals, registries or wards, or you can go in the community and look for them, or in the workplaces. How do you select the controls? It is generally from equal ratios. That is, if there is a study in which we are taking 1000 patients, then the number of cases will be 1000 as well as the number of controls will also be 1000. But if we are taking a small number of cases because the disease is rare or for whatever reason, that is cases are 100, then we can select 4 times or 5 times the number of controls. That is, for 100 cases you can select 500 controls. You need to match the age, match the characteristics such as age, sex and economical status, so that the bias or the error can be reduced. It can be derived from medical facilities, communities or neighborhood of cases or relatives. That is, if you are studying any disease, then you can the control of that case will be the brother or sister or a neighbor who is staying in the same locality, or a patient from the adjacent ward. The number of controls, they can be multiple groups as well according to the age and whatever criteria has been selected in the study. Next, you need to match according to age, sex, occupation, social status to ensure the comparability between the case and control. How do you define matching? Matching is the process by which we select controls in such a way that they are similar to the cases with regards to certain pertinent selected variables, example age, which are known to influence the outcome of the disease and which, if not adequately matched for comparability, could distort or confound the results. There's one more thing which you need to know, that is a confounding factor, that is one which is associated both with exposure and disease and is distributed unequally in study and control groups. As for example, if you are studying the correlationship between smoking and lung cancer, then consumption of alcohol can be a confounding factor, because in itself smoking can lead to lung cancer, as well as alcohol can contribute to the disease. Second step is matching, that is, to select a parallel group for matching. Frequency matching, such as that control group 2 has similar age, sex, etc. That is, if you are doing a case, then 40 to 50 you select 100 patients control, 100 patients cases, and so on for the next age groups. Or you can do pairwise matching, that is, for each case selected, one of a similar attribute of control is selected. Or there can be unmatched controls, that is, randomly they are selected. In unmatched controls, the amount of error or bias is always increased. Therefore, it is good if you do a parallel group of matching or a pairwise matching. Next, you need to know the measurement of exposure, that you come to know by taking proper history, that is self-reported. If the patients tell you of how much time they have been smoking or eating a particular thing, then hospital records, because there will be history recorded in the patient's case paper, from which you can measure the exposure, or you can detect using special investigations. Now, the main important part is analysis and interpretation. That is, you have to study the exposure rate among cases and controls to suspected factor, and second thing is estimation of disease risk associated with exposure or the odds ratio. So, you need to remember this formula, that is relative risk, which is also called the odds ratio, that is incidence amongst exposed divided by incidence amongst non-exposed. Okay, so it is suppose if we are studying association between chewing tobacco and development of oral cancer, then the risk factor is chewing tobacco. If it is present, the cases of cancer were 80 and the controls were 40, and even when the risk factor, that is when people were not chewing tobacco, still there were 10 cases of cancer and there were 50 controls, then the odds ratio, the relative risk is calculated by A upon A plus C. If it is greater than B upon B plus D, then relative risk exists, that is, there is a definite association between chewing tobacco and development of oral cancer. While odds ratio is calculated by A multiplied by D divided by B multiplied by C, that is 80 multiplied by 50 divided by 10 multiplied by 40, that is equal to 10, that is cases were 10 times more likely than controls to have chewed tobacco in the past. Another example is when you are studying the correlationship between smoking and oral cancer, then cases are A divided by A plus C, that is the total number of cases with lung cancer. Controls are B divided by B plus D, then relative risk is equal to incidence among exposed divided by incidence among non-exposed. So, it is A upon A plus C divided by B upon B plus D. What we come to know from this is frequency rate of cancer is definitely higher among smokers than non-smokers. Next, we come to an important short note, that is biases. Biases are defined as any systematic error in the determination of association between the exposure and the disease. The first one is because of selection of cases. If the cases have not been selected properly, if they have not been following the criteria for selection of cases properly, then there can be an error. Also, if you don't select the investigating controls and don't match the cases and controls properly, then too there will be a error. Confounding bias is distortion of study effect mixed with another effect, which I just explained to you, that example of alcohol and correlationship of alcohol with lung cancer and smoking. Now, if you overmatch, then also there is an error and there can be a bias during analysis as well. Next we come to cohort study or prospective study, but before that we need to learn what is the definition of cohort. Cohort is a group of people who share a common characteristic or experience within a defined time period. Example, age, environment or economical status. So, people who are born on 10th April will become a cohort. People who are born in 1991 can become a cohort. People who are exposed to an atomic bomb can also become a cohort. So, what are the indications of cohort study? When there is good evidence of association between exposure and disease, when there is rare exposure but the incidence of disease is high among exposed, when ample funds are available, there is easy follow up, cooperative, stable and easily available cohort. Cohort study takes a long time and therefore you require ample funds, you require a stable and easily available cohort so that people don't drop out of the study. Now, there are three types of cohort study. First is the prospective study, that is when you start the study the disease has not occurred. Retrospective is the disease has occurred and you are doing the cohort study. Combination of retrospective and prospective is that the disease has already started occurring in people and you continue the study forward. That is a combination of retrospective and prospective study. Next we come to the steps of cohort study, that is selection of study subjects. It can be from the general public or the group of population. We come to each step in detail. Then obtain the data either by personal interview or by mailed questionnaires. Selection of comparison groups can be internal or external. Follow up and analysis and interpretation. So, first of all the design of a cohort study. When you start the study, the people are without the disease, then they get exposed to the etiologic agent or not exposed to the etiologic agent. Some of them develop the disease and some of them don't. So, this is a design of a cohort study. The first step of cohort study is selection of study cohorts. That is, you identify a special exposure group defined because of unusual exposure to a suspected causative etiological factor or unusual lifestyle or experience, using a general population sample in which there is heterogeneity of exposure to the suspected etiological factor. That is, people are exposed to say fluoridated water where the ppm of fluoride is like 6 ppm, then there is heterogeneity of exposure to the suspected etiological factor to people who are staying in that locality. Obtaining data on exposure, that is collect the data from the sources either directly from the records or from the individual members by taking proper history or doing their medical examinations, special tests and evaluation of the environment. Next, you select the comparison group. They can be internal, that is when you start the study there is a single cohort entering the study and its members then are divided into classified into the exposure categories, and comparison cohort having similar demographic characteristics to the exposed group but not exposed to the risk factor. And then multiple comparisons can be made between the two groups. Next, we need to do a follow up. We have to wait for the disease to occur and that is why this study takes a long time. During the follow-up, you need to do periodic medical examinations, reviewing the physician and medical records, routine surveillance of death records, mail questionnaire. Ideally, you need a 90%, 95% of follow-up for the patients by the time the study is over. There are cases which will drop out because of various reasons, either they migrate or they stop being cooperative. So, at least 95% of the patients should be, the follow-up should be complete. So, how do you do the analysis and interpretation? You can compare the incidence rates amongst exposed and non-exposed, relative risk and attributable risk is calculated. So, rate of disease among chewers is 45 divided by 10,000 or 4.5 divided by 1000. Then among non-chewers it is 0.5 divided by 1000. So, relative risk is incidence among exposed divided by incidence among non-exposed. So, therefore, you find out that there is a 9 times higher risk for the patients to develop cancer if they are chewing the tobacco. So, again the formula of relative risk is incidence among exposed divided by incidence among non-exposed. The longer the relative risk, the greater is the tie strength of association between the suspected factor and the disease. Now, one more formula which you need to remember is attributable risk. It is the difference in incidence rates of disease or death between an exposed group and a non-exposed group, and it is usually expressed by a percentage. So, attributable risk is equal to incidence of disease rate among exposed. So, in the below example, it is 70 divided by 7,000, that is 10 per thousand, minus incidence of disease rate among non-exposed, that is 3 per thousand, that is 1 per thousand. So, incidence rate among those exposed minus the incidence rates among those non-exposed, that is 10 minus 1, that is 9, and then if you calculate it by percentage, then it becomes 90%. Now, just to compare what is the difference between case control and cohort study. Case control study proceeds from effect to the cause, while cohort study proceeds from the cause to the effect. Case control study, the disease has already occurred when you start the study, while in cohort study, this starts with the people who are exposed to the risk factor or suspected cause, and you wait for the disease to occur. Case control study tests whether the suspected cause occurs more frequently in those with the disease than those without the disease, while cohort study tests whether the disease occurs more frequently in those exposed than in those not similarly exposed. Case control study is usually the first approach for testing of a hypothesis, but it is also useful in exploratory studies, while cohort study is reserved for testing of precisely formulated hypotheses. Case control study involves fewer number of subjects, while cohort study involves a larger number of subjects. Case control study is retrospective and therefore it yields quick results, while cohort study is a prospective study, therefore there is a long follow-up period often needed involving delayed results. Case control study is suitable for study of rare diseases, while cohort study is inappropriate when the disease or exposure under investigation is rare. Case control study less costly and no dropouts, while cohort study is expensive and dropout ratios are higher. People might leave the study because of migration, or they might die, or they might shift to another place, or they might become uncooperative. In case control study, substantial biases can occur, while in cohort study the biases are generally lower. So, this is just a summary of how to remember all the steps of case control study and cohort study. So, in case control study, first you selected the cases and controls, you matched them, then you measured the exposure and did the analysis and interpretation. Similarly, in cohort study, you selected the study subjects, you obtained the data by personal interview and by mail questionnaires, you selected the comparison groups internally or from the external population, then did a follow-up and then did the analysis and interpretation.